Hello and welcome to another episode of 15 Fury Focus on Weight 15 Plus. I'm meteorologist Lance Huffman. Happy to have you here for today. Of course, back with us as always is Weight 15 meteorologist Becca Schumann. Becca, how are we doing for this episode?
Doing pretty good today, Lance. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I'm a little weird on sleep, as a lot of people know. I work on the morning shifts for us, and working on the mornings, it's me. I have to go to bed really late on the nights before working the morning shift. So when I do that, I usually go to bed at around 8 to 9. I felt very tired last night, but it didn't really translate to quality sleep. I woke up multiple times last night. So
Oh, that's always the worst.
I know, and I'm still dealing with a little bit of like sinus issues, but it should be okay here for this episode. So otherwise, happy to have you folks here for today. And Becca, the things that we typically cover in the show are things that people don't always find on our newscast. Can you kind of talk about why we have 15 Fury Focus?
Yeah, it really gives us an opportunity to just kind of dive deeper into what's going on in the weather, specific things, specific maybe terms or events that people might not know about, and just kind of dive into what's all going on in the weather world.
Right, that's exactly correct. Most of our weather hits, they're not too long. I mean, when we think of it in the weather world, or when we're live on a newscast, I mean, yeah, we can think it's long at that point, but it's only 3 minutes. And most of that's going to be spent talking about present weather. We can't really talk about the why and the hows, and often talk about, most commonly, the when people can expect to see rain, when people can expect to see snow. And speaking of rain, we've been in a pretty active weather pattern recently. We're going to talk about why some of that's been around, even some interesting weather history, something new that's actually coming out from the Storm Prediction Center, and how this is pretty much reshaping how a lot of severe weather can actually be categorized. And one of the most popular severe weather forecast items used on social media and throughout much of the United States. So it's very critical to pretty much talk about this today because it's now in effect for this. But we're now into March. This is a recording being done as of March 4th. I'm looking to the side here. For folks who are curious, some of our episodes, we often look kind of to the side over here. I'll pull up Skycam here, and you can kind of see this. So hello to the Skycam up there. This is the monitor that shows our weather graphics. So when we show the weather graphics here, this is actually us looking to the side. This is basically what we use as like our slideshow presentation. You also see the same graphics on the screen as well. But for folks who might be kind of curious, this is why we look to the side every once in a while for some of our graphics. It's very helpful to have us because we obviously can't see what we're showing on screen if we don't have this graphics computer kind of showing us that as well. So let's bring it back in here. I'll also bring up our topic of the day. And let's see. Did I put it in this one? I don't think I put it in this one. Let's see. While I look for it, Becca, you want to kind of talk about how mild it's been recently. It's been pretty nice.
Yeah, temperatures have definitely been a little warmer recently. We're seeing above average temperatures, seeing the 40s today. I think we saw lower 40s yesterday, and then towards the end of the week, we're looking at upper 60s. So it'll feel pretty nice for us at the end of the week. I mean, we're going to see some rain along with this warmth, but we've stayed a little bit drier than maybe we originally thought so far. So we haven't seen too much rain, but looking ahead to the end of the week, we'll definitely see some rain.
Yes, yeah. Some rain, and we'd certainly need it in the forecast. We'll talk about that here in just a second. But our topic of the day is meteorological spring. And being a meteorologist, Becca, you and I can probably agree with this. This is one of the most common questions we get in the world of weather. What is meteorological spring, and what is the difference between normal spring? I get this question so often, whether it's fall or whether it's even winter or summer. What is the difference between meteorological spring and astronomical spring? Because we've hit one, which is meteorological spring, because that started on March 1st. This is being recorded on March 4th. What's the difference from a couple weeks from now when we hit astronomical spring?
Yeah, so meteorological spring and the other meteorological seasons are for record keeping. So this is when we typically see a trend of warm up and certain precipitation. So meteorological spring is March 1st through May 1st, and this is what we count as the spring season versus traditional spring is March 20th. But yeah, and then the traditional relies on the amount of sun that we see and then also the tilt of the planet's axis.
Yeah, and for folks kind of curious in this regard, this is mainly for record keeping purposes. Uh, in the same fashion that we use the Fort Wayne Airport for those record keeping purposes, whenever we see snow, I mean, you might be at your home and you're wondering, well, the Fort Wayne Airport said that I got 6 inches of snow, but I got 8 inches at my home. Why isn't that being recorded? Well, it's for record keeping purposes because I believe in Fort Wayne records have started since 1897. I think you have that on your
Yes.
note over there because we have a lot of winter stats that we're going to go over for the show to kind of break down meteorological winter. Uh, it's in the same fashion of that. It's for consistency purposes because sometimes you'll have the same date for the start of maybe one season. And this is where I might have a brain twister here, tongue twister, but brain twister. I don't know if every year, like if spring starts on the same exact date.
I think it does.
I think it does.
Yeah.
So, in logically, you wouldn't think that it makes too much of a difference, but it's like finishing a day on the 21st, or finishing a season on the 21st and starting it on the 22nd, when you can probably just start it on the start of one month and then end it at the very end of that 3 month period. It kind of keeps it even. It keeps it smooth in that regard. But that doesn't mean that we can't see hints of maybe spring or winter in other months. And that's certainly going to be something we talk about too, because in regards to snow, some pretty interesting facts came out of that. But first, let's talk about the mild weather that we've been seeing recently, Becca, because we kind of mentioned it a little bit. It's been beautiful in terms of that weather
Yes.
recently. Our high temperatures, they've been even from the 50s, some of us even into the 60s at points. So it's been pretty nice. We'll look at a departure from average in this case. It's been a little bit back and forth. We've had some cold moments here and there, but generally speaking, at least since February 25th, to really wrap up the month of February into this month, we've been seeing some pretty mild, near average to some days even quite a bit above average, especially to end the month of February, the 27th and the 28th. 18 degrees above average for that high temperature was the 27th, and then the 28th was 11 degrees above average. And our average highs, when we really wrap up February, they're in the lower 40s. So this is when you start to think 50s, getting close to 60s. Some of us got into the 60s on some of these days. Felt nice. It wasn't too terribly windy. That was the good thing. It wasn't like insanely windy. It was a little breezy at times. And I know there was a lot of people who came up to me for the Home and Garden show, Becca, to pretty much say that weather was super nice. Why don't we have any more of that coming? We can't control that, unfortunately.
Fortunately, we can't. We are not magicians. I wish we could control the weather sometimes, but unfortunately, we cannot.
Because personally, I'd be like, oh, we got all the snow earlier this season. We're just gonna have 50s and 60s for the rest of
I'd give us some
March.
snow for Christmas, and then after we get past that, we can
Right.
just have some nice, calm weather.
Right, give us rain, here when we need it and there when we don't need it. Because if we did, we wouldn't be dealing with this drought.
Yes.
But I mean, it was great to see everyone out there for the Home and Garden show, Becca. And this,
Yeah.
I actually am going to give you some pretty good kudos here. You did really good on your live interviews for the Home
you.
and Garden show. Is that the first time you've been live with us?
Yes, it was the first time. So I had, I think, 4 different live shots because I did 2 each day. But it was really fun getting to talk to different vendors and just meet different people and hear about all the different products too. Because there's so many things that people sell that you probably haven't heard of before. But
Okay. And did you go to the Humane Fort Wayne booth? Did you pet any of the cats or
I did
dogs
not
there?
get to do that, but I did see videos and they looked really cute.
Yes, and Humane Fort Wayne, I believe they were the main sponsor of the Home and Garden show this year. So hopefully they got a pretty good amount of awareness for Humane Fort Wayne.
Yeah, hopefully they got some adoptions.
Yes, I'm pretty
I'm
sure they
sure they
did get
did,
some
yeah.
adoptions. You can't see those kittens just sitting in that little fenced kind of cage thing that they have, and not be like, oh, I want to adopt that
Yes.
thing, because I wanted to adopt it really
Yeah.
bad. I would have had to adopt it as a working cat, which is a little bit of a different process,
Yes.
since my cats are barn cats. For folks who know me, I have a barn cat. He doesn't contribute very well in terms of taking care of the mice population, but he's very cute, and that's enough for me.
Yes.
Uh, we're getting on a little bit of a side tangent here, folks. Let's reel it back in. Let's 15 Fury focus on what we've been seeing recently. It's been pretty misty. It's been pretty foggy, cloudy, kind of gloomy. And we're going to be stuck into this pattern for maybe the next few days, Becca, right?
Yes, yeah, it can certainly last the next few days, and we'll definitely see some rain, which could help things as far as drought goes, but it's definitely a long way off, as we didn't really see a whole lot of precipitation during February in the past few months.
Yeah, I mean, color me shocked. We're looking at rain chances in, some of the more wet months that we see throughout the year. When we hit spring, this is typically when we start to see more opportunities of some rain. And again, go figure, we start to see that. So this is Futurecast, so this is already showing what we could see on this evening. So we'll see how much of that pans out. And for folks who are seeing this in the future, I'm showing this even though this might have already happened for some of us, because it's good to look back on how some of these models perform. Because if some of these models perform a little bit less favorably compared to, say, maybe one, it's pretty good to have a gauge. There's like, okay, this one did not do well in terms of showing what we saw in terms of this day. How will it perform for this day? And maybe say the GFS says, the Global Forecast System, that performed really well one day. Maybe it has some momentum. Maybe it's onto something. So it's sometimes something to keep an eye on with models. But you can see, not only are we looking at some more chances for rain on Thursday, it looks to be pretty widespread as well. But another cold front's likely going to be moving through as we get towards this weekend. You can see another chance at maybe even some widespread rain as well. So more cloudy times, more rain moments as well. But at least it's not multiple inches of snow as we get into March. Because I'm a person where it's March, I want to think of flowers. I want to think of the flowers budding. Because I want to get some flowers ready for my mom for Mother's Day. And I know Mother's Day is in May, but you got to
Thinking early.
Yeah, you got to think early. You got to
Yeah.
get some of that stuff done in advance. You got to grow those flowers. You got to plant those seeds. You got to make sure they're grown well. Because I don't want to give my mom a seed.
No.
I
it
wanna
has to
give
be a
my grandma a
beautiful
flower. Yeah. So this is typically the time of the year, especially with the Home and Garden Show just happening, for people to start planning for some of that stuff. And the good news is that this rain's also going to help us a little bit in terms of the instance as well. However, there is also a little bit of a concern, not so much around here, that there could be some river flooding. River flooding could move into some spots around here. Should not be too impactful here. But central and southern Indiana, they have a stationary front that's been driving a lot of this, and that's also a recipe for us seeing some of that rain Thursday. So I'll backtrack this back to Thursday, which is tomorrow, March 5th. A stationary front is going to be really that culprit in a weak low-pressure system to give us more of this rain. Now, if you've kept an eye on the weather world recently, and especially Becca, you and I, we've been keeping an eye on the rainfall amounts because they've gotten pretty high at times, especially in southern and central Indiana. This is really going to pile up over time, and this could give a recipe for some higher river flooding down there, and also just some general consistent aerial flooding in some of the spots down there, right?
Yes, certainly. Yeah, as that rain continues to fall, and that rain has kind of shifted south. So yeah, the central Indiana, Indianapolis, and southern Indiana are definitely seeing those higher rainfall amounts, and can certainly add up and lead to some river flooding and localized flooding as well in those like low-lying areas, especially rural areas as well. And the ground has been dry for so long too, so it's not able to absorb all of this rain that's falling.
Mm-hmm. We want to think of it like a sponge. But in this case, a dry sponge is able to absorb that water pretty well. But think of the sponge as it being like maybe you set it on fire. I don't know if this is a good comparison, but think of like you set the sponge on fire it's not going to be able to absorb the water very well at all. It has to be the sponge. It has to have, we have to think of the ground of it having at least a little bit of water in it to be able to gain more water. Water is polar. It likes to absorb itself. But if you have it so dry, it has to really soak up an elevated amount of water over such a short period of time. It just struggles to do that. I zoomed this in on Futurecast because we're going to talk about one of the rivers you want to keep an eye on, and that is the Wabash River. The Wabash River, you can see it actually feeds into the Ohio River and the Mississippi River. Feeds into the feeds into the Ohio River. My brain. There we go. It feeds. I'm pretty sure it feeds into the Ohio River, and I say pretty sure because again, my brain. When this is being recorded, it's a little weird, and it kind of branches off from the Indiana-Illinois state line, kind of near the Terre Haute area.
Yeah,
but
the
obviously,
Wabash was right on the Purdue campus when I was there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this Wabash River flows into our area too. So how can rain from southern Indiana, Becca, move up here? And how can that be an issue for river flooding?
Yeah, it can flow through the rivers and the tributaries as well. And that can, when the one river down south floods, it can lead to some of the water traveling north and create some possible flooding concerns here as well.
Yes, and the good news is that around here, our rainfall amounts, they should not be too high. So the rain that we see or have been seeing, it's going to be helpful for the ground. It's not going to be too much to where flooding is going to be a huge concern. Mainly around the rivers, it's going to be where it's a bit more elevated, but should not be expecting a huge issue from the rivers. Because where I live in the Zanesville area, I've grown up in Zanesville at least, we don't live too far from the Wabash River because that flows through Markle, which is just a little bit of ways from Zanesville, and that's just off of I-69. They've had some flooding issues in the past, and they actually have had to have a little bit of a split of the Wabash River through Markle. And they have some flooding mitigation there. Some flooding history has been known, and especially in the March and April months in the Wabash River, Huntington. We have a reservoir in Huntington now to help mitigate that flooding impact because that's Roush Lake. Salamone, that's a river that flows into Lower Wabash River. Same for the Mississinewa. Those two have reservoirs that have been pretty much created to help mitigate flooding. And I think those were done by either in the 40s or 50s, if I'm correct, because there were some very serious floods that happened way back when. And again, this is kind of the time of the year where flooding frequency is not too uncommon. This is one of the more typical times of the year where it can happen, Becca, right?
Yeah, with late winter as snow begins to melt, which we haven't seen a lot of snow melt. It was more gradual this year, and then as the spring rolls around, we see a lot of rain and ice jams as well are possible. So there's a lot of instances in the spring where we can have certainly some flooding risk.
Right. The typical time frame for when it's most common, at least for a steady flood, we'll get into a different type of flood here in a second. Late winter through early spring, so we're right in that time frame. This happens from a combination of snowmelt. We haven't had to worry about that recently. Rain, spring storms, so kind of the combination of those two, some things that we can see. Ice jams, and those haven't been too big of an issue recently either, thankfully. But you can see 3 years on there that if you just do a little bit of some research, say 1913 flood Indiana, 1959 flood Indiana, and a lot of people won't even have to search this one, the 1982 flood, all three of those occurred in March. And this is pretty relevant for this time of year. We're not looking at a big flood right now. This is some great news, but it's always important to have some awareness on that. And Becca, I will say, Fort Wayne has made some massive strides, massive improvements for some of those rivers, because in the 1982, when the President Ronald Reagan,
I remember seeing pictures,
came down to Fort Wayne. My parents were telling me about this. My grandparents tell me about this. Again, this is not anything political. Reagan's a pretty nice guy, and he was handing out sandbags and doing all this stuff. So when the president has to come to your city, it's a pretty big deal.
Something significant is about to happen.
Yeah, and it's not a political campaign. It was like to actually kind of look at the damage that was sustained. It was
Yeah.
pretty nasty because it was a combination of a lot of those things. It was snow melt because it was a very snowy season that they had, combination of rain, uh, just all pretty much all at once. It wasn't necessarily a flash flood. It was a gradual flood that happened over time. Uh, so when we talk about flash floods, those are typically most common from thunderstorms, typically in the summer. That's when we see our most common instances of flash flooding. Not always the case, because we can see flash floods and thunderstorms in different times of the year, but they're generally more intense and more common in the summer, and they're shorter in longevity, and they're more sudden, hence the term flash in this case as well. Becca, if you don't have anything to add here, do we want to get into some of the Climo things, which is basically just saying some of the stats through the winter season, and I can go through some of the stuff for the month of February as well.
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. Let's start off with the month of February, and then we'll kind of talk about the winter season as a whole. Let's bring up our graphics here to kind of show you how February fared in terms of temperatures and precipitation. For our month of February, we were actually 0.9 degrees above average, which is crazy considering we started off the month with a record low temperature. Minus 9 degrees was the lowest temperature we saw in February. That was exactly on February 1st, that morning. That was not a fun start to the month.
No, certainly not. But yeah, it is crazy to think that we were actually, slightly above average, but still, February definitely started off very cold. Then we did see a few warm days here and there, but then we had that week where we did see warmer temperatures for most of the week that week.
Yeah, and thankfully that was able to carry us pretty much around or just above average in terms of those temperatures. And for folks who are curious, these aren't the high temperatures that it's saying we're above average in total. It's taking all of the temperatures recorded day by day and pretty much mooshing it into an average. So it's a lot of numbers that go into it in this case. I also want to note how interesting February is this year, that we only have 4 of those columns because Sunday, it's Saturday. It was a perfect calendar for just 4 weeks for this month of February, and then for the month of actually, I wanted to include this. It is the 32nd warmest month, if I'm correct on that. I'll have to check on that stat on it right here because I actually have some of this here. Let's see. The month of February, yes, it was the 32nd warmest February on record. And then this February, I believe, was also the 23rd driest month. And this is because if we look at the precipitation that we saw, look at that, only 0.94 inches of precipitation. This includes snowmelt and some rain. Most of this rain came from around the 19th to the 20th. And that was just a generally dry month overall. We were 1.12 inches of precipitation below average. It's not the lowest that we've seen, but it is the 23rd driest since we've had records begin in 1897. And that's the same thing. Records began in 1897 for the temperatures as well. So let's get into some of the spring items real quick, and then we'll actually get to some new changes with the Storm Prediction Center here, Becca. We've got about, I'd say, 6 minutes here.
Okay.
So for the, I know December, that was a pretty wonky month because we didn't see too much in terms of snow, but we saw a couple of clipper systems. An interesting stat that I wanted to kind of mention, Becca, is that we actually saw winter with below average snowfall, but snowfall in total for the snow year is actually above average, if I'm correct on that, Becca. You might have to take a look at that because I know we annotated a few things. The National Weather Service posts what we call Climo summaries on their weather page, and we can go to weather.gov/IWX, and they have a lot of that stuff posted there. So you can even take a look at some of this stuff for yourselves there because it's pretty good information because we can't cover all of it here. So it's pretty cool to actually maybe check out some of this as well and maybe even reflect on some of that. Becca, do you have any?
Yeah, it's about 7 inches above the normal value for the snowfall year, but it's just below the total for the season, I believe.
What are we looking at maybe in terms of temperatures?
Temperatures, so we saw our average minimum temperature was about 4 degrees colder
Okay.
than normal for
Okay.
this year.
I think compared to last year we just barely were below average.
Yes, yeah. So
Uh,
we're quite a bit lower. With it was 17 degrees was the average minimum, and the average maximum was 35 degrees. So that's about right at normal.
Okay, okay. Do you have any more interesting info in terms of maybe the season?
Yeah, so I saw that it was the driest in 50 years. When the last time it was 3.22 inches of precipitation was measured in the winter of 76, 77. So talking about precipitation, not snowfall, but yeah, it was actually the driest in 50 years. So that's a pretty significant stat.
Yeah, we're hoping for some rain to help us with the drought. We don't want to hope for too
Yes.
much, but the farmers could certainly use it as they get ready for the growing season here. That's going to be popping up not too long from now, that's for sure. Uh, Anything else over there, Becca?
Let's see. For degree days, we saw 3,495 for heating total.
And I think this is actually quite a bit more than last winter as
Yes,
well.
last year was 3,313. So, and it's also above normal as well, because normal's just about 1,300. So,
Okay.
yeah, definitely saw a lot of days that we needed some heating.
Right. And thank you for mentioning that because we've not talked about this before on the show.
Yes.
Heating degree days are really in reference to how cold it is outside. It kind of relates the coldness outside to maybe how hard a heating unit has to work. So the colder the temperatures, the more heating degrees or the heating degree days there are. The more you have to turn on your AC, the more cooling degree days there will be. So the more intense, it really shows how intense some of the cold and how long lasting a lot of the cold or the heat can be throughout the year. We've not had any cooling degree days yet, and that's because we've not been in summer. We've not had to use any AC units yet, but that'll likely change as we get towards summer.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Let's get to some big news as we wrap up this episode. We got a couple minutes here, so let's talk about it. I'm going to show you our website, or at least our web browser here, and this is Google Chrome, or excuse me, Microsoft Edge. Not too much looks different from when we meteorologists look at the Storm Prediction Center website, except for a couple things. New changes have been made to the Storm Prediction Center, and it's actually looking to be some pretty nice improvements for this as well. And this is, I believe, called conditional intensity grouping, if I'm correct.
Conditional intensity groups, I think.
Okay. So say I'm to look at day 3 from now. So this is not 3 days out, but this is actually today for Wednesday, March 4th. We call it day 1 for severe weather outlooks. Day 2 is the next day, and then day 3 is 2 days from now. I know it sounds a little counterintuitive, but kind of work with me here. They are changing how we can describe the chances for severe weather, especially if some severe weather, maybe there's a lower chance of it, but if any severe weather pops up, maybe it could be more intense. So in terms of this case, that's why the Storm Prediction Center is actually making a few changes, and they're going to be pretty good changes as well. Because what used to be, for folks who might be looking at their screen now, there's this little red blob and there's this little yellow blob, and then you can kind of see what we call hatching of these black dashed lines. In the past, you could only have this black dashed line within at least these yellow contours. Stuff above that you can't. These days, and I think we can go to a previous graphic. Let's go to the day 2 outlook too. This is pretty important to mention with this case. There's only a 5% chance of tornadic activity within a 25-mile radius, if I'm correct, in parts of, Texas and Oklahoma. Now, what does this mean? It means that there's a relatively lower end chance of a tornado tomorrow, Thursday, March 5th, in parts of Texas and Oklahoma, but any of those that form in some of that hatched area, even in the 2% chance and the low chance, some of them might be a little bit more stronger. So that's why the messaging has been really nice to have. should help us as well in terms of the broadcast industry, Becca. But
Yeah, it's certainly helpful. And just to talk about the significance of the event that could occur, because I think that kind of lacked in the past, just with like actually being able to clarify and help people understand what it actually means. But to have just another layer that adds on to the clarity and what type of severe event could occur definitely will help.
right. So, folks, thank you for joining us on this episode of 15 Fury Focus. Have a great one.